Hey everybody, it's Drew with Drew Fab. So this is my second video in the fastener series. Again, this is going to be just a kind of a high-level overview. So this one is I'm going to talk about the grades of bolts and what the different grades are, what they mean, why you want to use one or the other. So I have a handful of bolts in front of me, grade 5, grade 8, Allen head, 12 point, shoulder screw, shoulder bolt, whatever you want to call it, and an ARP stainless 12 point. So what is grade 5? Okay, so grade 5, what that grade number means is it correlates to the strength of the material the bolt is made of. Okay, grade 8, same thing. So grade 5 you can tell by how many dashes are on the head of the bolt. So it's got 3 dashes, it means grade 5. Okay, so a grade 5 bolt, so all the information I'm going to give you I got actually out of the McMaster-Carr catalog. Like I said, this is not an endorsement for them, this is just where I got my information. Very widely accessible, right? So it has a tensile strength of 120 KSI. That means 120,000 PSI. K means thousands of something, and then SI is KS, or KSI is thousands of PSI. Okay. So this bolt also conforms to ASME B18.2.1 and SAE J429. I got some notes down there, so if you see my eyes dipping low, that's what I'm doing is I'm reading my notes because I don't remember things that I can look up, and this is one of those things I can look up. So grade 8 bolt. It has 6 marks on the head, so you can tell a grade 8. And it has a tensile strength of 150 KSI. Also conforms to the same standards. One of the ones I'm missing is the grade 9 bolt. And it has, according to McMaster-Carr, a tensile strength of 180 KSI. And it does not, according to McMaster-Carr, that bolt that they sell, does not conform to a standard. Now that's not to say that every grade 9 bolt doesn't conform to a standard, but the one that they sell doesn't. And actually, I'm going to go into that in a different video about standards and why that's concerning to me, and why it may not be concerning to me, or why it should be or shouldn't be concerning to you. So next is a socket head cap screw. So this one has a tensile strength of 170 KSI and conforms to ASTM A574. This little 12 point, it has a tensile strength as well of 170 KSI. Also conforms to ASTM A574, but also conforms to an IFI 115. Not one I'm familiar with. I didn't look it up before the video. If you know about it, go ahead and email me, text me, whatever. I'd love to find out what it's all about. So the next one is the shoulder screw. So it has a tensile strength of 140 KSI and conforms to ASTM 574. Next, I have the ARP. So ARP does not publish. I don't know if their bolts do conform to a standard. They don't publish it. I was not able to find it on their website. If you do find it somewhere, what standard they conform to, if there is one, go ahead and email it to me. I'd love to see it, but I wasn't able to find one. What they do, however, tell you is the tensile strength. So this is one of their stainless bolts, their stainless 12 points, and it has a tensile strength of 180 KSI. So, little recap: 120, 150, grade 9 is missing 180, right? 170, 170, 140, and 180. Now, I also looked up their chromoly bolts. So their chromoly 12 points have a tensile strength of between 180 and 210 KSI. That's how they're rated. Now, that's incredibly strong. So why would I want to use a grade 5 bolt or a grade 8 bolt, things like that, right? So what it really boils down to is using the appropriate fastener for what you're doing. And you might say, well, how do I figure that out? That's the sticky situation. That's the sticky question. You know, it's really not an obvious answer in most cases. So one of the rules of thumbs that I use, if it's load bearing and it's a safety critical item, use the strongest, highest quality, highest grade fastener that you can get your hands on that you can afford, right? So let's take my drag cart for instance. My suspension bolts, they're grade 8. I can't afford to put all ARPs in the front end, unfortunately. It's just not feasible. But the grade 8 ones are probably stronger than what a factory bolt was. They may or may not be, it's hard to say, but more than likely they are. And the factory bolts that held the suspension components on the factory Vega seem to be sufficient for street driving, so this should be pretty good for drag racing. And that's a pretty standard thing, is using a grade 8 bolt. You might argue that you need a higher quality fastener. You might argue that you don't need a higher quality fastener. But at least you know with a grade 8, you're getting something that's pretty strong, that's high quality. I mean, 150,000 PSI is not insignificant. And it would take a lot to shear that bolt off because I have all of my stuff in double shear. So it would take a lot to shear that fastener off. So one of the reasons that I do use different fasteners for different reasons, especially like the socket head cap screws, is because these are actually stronger than a grade 8. So kind of interesting. You can get these from the 12 points too. You can get these from a MasterCard, and they are stronger than the grade 8s. They're 170 KSI. So that's super interesting and something to keep in mind. They're not exorbitantly expensive. They're not super cheap either. You're gonna pay for good fasteners. Anybody that's bought ARP knows that. But something to keep in mind. These guys here are kind of halfway between these guys as far as strength is concerned. They do pretty well. I've used them in a lot of applications. They do really, really well in very tight tolerance or reasonably tight tolerance applications, somewhere where you got a fairly precision fit. And the more precise the fit, the less chance they have of breaking, because you're not putting auxiliary loads on them. They're just in tension or in shear, and if they're in shear only, it's going to be very, very difficult to break that fastener. So what it really boils down to is using the appropriate fastener for what you're doing. And if you don't know that answer, go and do some Googling, look it up. That's what I do. If I don't know what the answer is, I go look it up, or I might calculate some loads and things like that. Sometimes it's not obvious, and sometimes it's kind of just a guess in the dark. It's just you want to use the highest quality fastener that you get your hands on, because in the end, fasteners are a safety item. The fasteners, especially if they're in your engine or they're in your transmission or they're in your suspension components, those are what are going to keep you alive. If it's something, something comes apart, or you're on a track like my car going 130 miles an hour in the 8th mile, and you have a subpar fastener on the front end and it breaks when you're going 130 miles an hour, you're going to have a bad time. So it's really important to use the appropriate fastener for what you're doing. And that is not an exact science, and that is not a, something that's always easy to figure out. There is a little bit of kind of just knowing what you're doing to that, and I can't say I always get it right myself. But it's definitely something that you should keep in mind and you should be cognizant of when you're doing this stuff. So hope that was reasonably informative. I'm going to do another video on the standards and why that's important. And I hope you guys will watch that one. If you did like this, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, share it. I really appreciate it. I love doing these videos. This is something that I really enjoy. I like sharing the knowledge that I've gained over the years with people. This is something you can find readily on McMaster-Carr, this information that I gave to you today. But it's something that not everybody might pay attention to. You might say, oh, I'm just going to grab one off the shelf, right? So, like I said, if you like it, subscribe. Find me on Instagram at DrewFab, Facebook, DrewFab. I'm in Lakeside, California. YouTube, you can also find me as DrewFab. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.